viď?
Almost there. Now for the tough part. The body needs to be moved. Where's Ridley when you need him?
No, a teď co?
All right. I just need some gloves and my apron. Then I can get to work.
Kde mám ten? Tady?
I'm going to need my tape recorder for this.
Tak, rekorder.
Autopsy dated November 22nd, 1991. 7:32 p.m. Led by Dr. Jack Hanman. I begin by verifying the identity of the Jane Doe. It's most likely Harper Lloyd, age 35, found in a well-owned house by her neighbors Leonard and Dorothy Chelsea, reported missing for a week. Firefighters found the body after the Chelsea family began complaining that their tap water tasted strange, and at one point had begun to smell and turn a dark color.
Cože, fakt jo. Tak jako určitě bych tohle vypila.
It is also known that the deceased was diagnosed with affective bipolar disorder. Harper was placed on drug therapy, which she dropped out of fairly regularly. During her treatment, she was under the care of her common-law partner, Richard Benson, professional truck driver.
Dobře, bipolární porucha, dál.
The last person who had contact with the deceased was her partner. Harper's last message read as follows. I'm gonna take a shit in their stupid well. Then we'll see who has the last laugh. Nice one. Police records also show that Mrs. Lloyd was in constant conflict with her neighbors. The constant parties and subsequent brawls made living in the area nearly impossible, especially when Lloyd's partner wasn't around. I proceed to open the bag and check the state of decomposition of the corpse. The most important task in forensic identification of a drowned person is to distinguish whether the death occurred before or after entering the water.
Utonula, jo. Tak to nechci vědět, jak vypadá. Ty krása. Uj.
Okay, that could have been worse. I carefully removed the victim's clothes so as not to damage the skin.
Tak určitě.
The deceased was found fully clothed. One shoe was missing. I'm going to need the camera to document all possible suspicious marks.
Vezmeme si náš Polaroid.
Definitely the first thing that stands out is the very advanced post-mortem gigantism.
Ona je těhotná, nebo proč je takhle nafoukla?
The skin of the deceased appears very delicate, smooth, and relaxed from being in the water for a long time. The whole body is extremely pale.
No, přiblížit potřebuji. Ona nemá oko. Ježišmarja, to ovládání.
There are bruises and hemorrhages on the neck. These usually occur due to increased inhalation when fighting to breathe underwater.
No, je těhotná, podle mě ubyla teda.
Post-mortem markings are seen on the underside of the body. That is, on the back, thighs, and calves of the deceased.
Už má tak černý ruce.
The skin on the hands can be easily separated from the body. The separation takes the form of a glove.
Ty vole, co to je? Že kdyby byla spálená kyselinou nebo něčím.
There are some obvious scratches on the skin.
A co to ucho? Pšt, Arinko. Pojď sem. To je hrozný. Co? Tady něco? Jo, ty chodidla.
The so-called washerwoman's skin on the feet. The deceased had indeed been in the water for a long time.
Žíly.
It's likely that the deceased was lying on her back when she was fished out. So, after the preliminary exam, it's time to take a closer look at this. Today's date, the deceased was clothed. Rigor mortis does not need to be checked. Based on the state of decay, you can be sure it has subsided. Where to start?
Ukaž mi to.
There are obvious scratches on the skin, especially on the back and hands. These could be defensive wounds, evidence of some sort of altercation prior to death.
Dobrá, mi to nepřijde jak škrabance. Dobrý.
The spots have a purplish blue-red hue, which is a typical sign of the death of the organism. Yep, pretty typical. Liver mortis are formed as a result of putrefaction of blood in the veins. Due to the fact that the deceased was wearing shoes all the time, her feet are in better condition than her hands. Nevertheless, we can still notice a clear, wavy skin and the so-called washerwoman's skin texture.
Už to nejde přiblížit?
No obvious signs of struggle. The skin on the hands would have easily peeled away from the flesh. Some of the fingers have already lost their nails. We see thick, white foam in the mouth of the deceased, resulting from pulmonary edema. Foam is a characteristic in deaths due to drowning. Okay, that's probably enough to indicate it. I'd better note that down in the records.
Tak.
Those abrasions appear relatively fresh. No healing or scarring is visible.
Plicní edém, dobře. Pak tady byly ty
There doesn't seem to
fleky.
be anything unusual about this liver mortis. Hands
Dobře.
heavily wrinkled from submersion in water. Typical washerwoman skin. Considering the deceased's penchant for drinking alcohol, it could have been a mere accident.
Tak, ještě ty
Diffuse
žíly.
spots are caused by blood rotting in the veins.
Okay. Co by to mohlo být?
In this case, the question is, was drowning an accident or of suicidal intent?
Jako
Maybe
pochybuju, že
it's
by se
just an
zabil sam.
abrasion, or maybe the result of a fight and being pushed into a well.
To Asi
Their
spíš.
distribution suggests that the victim was probably lying on her back when fished out of the water. A simple trip, loss of balance, and as a result, you end up in a deep hole with no way out. Fortunately, the skin on the hands didn't fall off. Otherwise, I'd have trouble identifying the deceased.
Jo, takže budeme snímat
Liver
otisky
mortis of a
prstů,
different
jo.
color could indicate poisoning with carbon monoxide, cyanides, or nitrates. However, this is not the case here. That's all for now. Before I begin the dissection, I'll make sure the suggested identity is correct. The suitcase with the fingerprint equipment should be around here somewhere.
A kde ty kufřík? A ty otisky? Kde je ten kufřík? Počkej, tady.
Oh, here it is.
Takže budeme potřebovat pásku, pudr.
If the body of the
Check.
deceased is well preserved, fingerprinting is similar to that of a living person.
Tak jasně.
With
Serene.
decomposing bodies, the tissue of the pads and the fingers tends to shrink. To remove these shrinkages, a mixture of glycerin or air is used.
Tady máš dál.
The fingerprint sheet should always be checked. Slipping fingers, too much or too little ink, or inaccurate hand position can make fingerprints illegible.
Jasný. To je všechno? Jo.
I'm going to conduct a dactyloscopic examination. If in fact the deceased is in the police database, I will find her.
Tak koukneme na Jane Doe.
Glycerin is injected successively between the nail and the skin of each finger. The substance then enters the fingertip, removing shrinkage and wrinkles.
No počkej. Jo, takhle. Špičky. Jak se tam rýsuje, ne? Hej, to je hustý.
Now I take a brush. Only when the skin is taut and elastic can you use ink.
Dobrý, ne? Takhle. Jo, celou ruku. Aha.
I think it's enough. I'm getting fingerprint samples. In the case of drowning victims, you have to be extremely careful. The skin may fall off the hand like a glove when you take the print. I'll use the fax machine to add the print into the system.
Fuck jsem, jo.
Green button and... Once the data uploads, I'll run the prints against the police database on the computer.
Počítač, jo. To mám v kanclu, nebo kde? Tady nemám počítač. Jo, on je tam.
Great. The data is there. Click upload. Now, go through the database and find a matching print. Expect possible hours of fun.
Jo, já to mám tahat, jo. Ježiš.
Okay, let's check for matches.
Analýza.
This is
Nic.
not our Jane Doe. I wish there was an easier way to do this. One more. Analyze button. And we have a result. Everyone has a story to tell, even if it's just a police record.
Ukaž krásy.
So, as predicted, the deceased turned out to be Harper Lloyd. That went smoothly. I'll print this out and attach it to the medical records.
Vytiskla jsem to. Kde mám tiskárnu? Jo, tady.
Great. Now I can go back to my inspection.
Tak.
I'm adding the name of the deceased. I'll start the internal examination by taking fluid from the victim's brain. A needle inserted through the nose will do the trick. If the victim was alive when she fell into the well, she must have swallowed water fighting for her life, and then diatoms, characteristics of pooled water like a well, got into the body. In the meantime, I'll check the sample under the microscope. I'm sure that these algae traces will be found in the samples taken from the well where police found the body. Now I need to adjust the knobs properly and place the diatom in the center of the slide. Diatoms are single-celled microscopic algae.
No a co mám dělat? Jako tady?
I won't even notice an army of diatoms from this distance.
Ještě. No dělej. Ještě?
Great. This way I'll see if I'm dealing with the apertures. No. Nah. Too much light. Oh. I'm finally starting to see something here.
Takže takhle to mám nechat?
Nah. No. I'm finally starting to see something here. It's not a... And perfect. As expected, we find the aforementioned algae in the solution. Their upper part, epitheca, which overlaps the lower, hypotheca, is clearly visible. The presence of diatoms in the brain samples taken indicate that the deceased was certainly alive when she fell into the water and was possibly conscious.
Dobře, to znamená, že buď zakopla a spadla sama a neuměla plavat, anebo ji někdo zabil.
Since there were diatoms in the brain, it means that many more of them must have entered the body. Studies of the rest of the organs will most likely confirm this hypothesis. I can finally get to the practical part. I must be extra careful because the skin of the deceased is very stretched. I wouldn't want an explosion here.
No jo, pořád.
You can immediately see a very large swelling of the organs. In addition, all internal organs are very congested. I proceed to remove the rib cage.
Počkej, ještě jsem neskončila.
It's easy to see that the ribs have been imprinted in the lungs. So, I'm going to start by drawing blood from the lungs for testing for diatoms. If diatoms were only present in the lungs, this would mean that the victim was placed in the well after death, and the perpetrator wanted to get rid of the corpse in this way.
Vzorky z plic, jo?
Now, I remove the lungs and proceed to their examination.
Ježišmarja, proč tady vždycky odejdu? Já tady musím
Taking the
zůstat.
lungs in my hand, I feel that the tissues have lost their elasticity, which is the result of water emphysema. In addition, there is significant swelling of the organs, and as a result, we have a nice imprint of the ribs. The emphysema itself, it's clear how far it's progressed, which is characteristic of drowning. Corpses found in water are worth examining with a tomograph. However, I can't count on such luxuries, so I must reach for a more archaic technology. A bucket and water.
Musím zase do skladu jít, jo. Přestaň blikat, ty vole, fuj. Co mě skočí?
I hope no one dipped a mop in it. It's best to go to the lab for this.
Jdeme.
Historically, the lung float test is used to detect infanticide.
To chceš studenou vodu?
The water should be at room temperature.
Pokojovou teplotu.
That's enough. To test for this, I have to place the lungs in a container of water. This checks if there is air in the lungs. And speaking of lungs, everything is ready to bring them here.
Co je? Joj. Jo. A najednou nechceš prášky, jo?
Of course, such a study isn't without flaws. Air
Limit
may have
pizza.
entered a newborn's airways during resuscitation attempts. Gases released during decomposition could also give a false result. In this case, however, it's about something else, namely, the amount of fluid in the lungs. To test for this, I have to place the lungs in a container of water and wait to see if they fall or if they will float on the surface.
No. No dobře, ale... Aha. To kdybys nakládal svíčkovou.
The lungs collapsed easily.
Tak mi to ale dej, ale...
Fluid could have entered the lungs during panic attempts to catch breath underwater, but it could also be the result of bacterial infections or cancer, so further investigation is needed. I move on to dissecting the lungs of the deceased. You can hear the distinct, very unpleasant crackling of the tissues being cut through.
Pomalu.
The parenchyma is remarkably pale, although small hemorrhagic foci and petechia are present on the surface. All right. Now, I will check the collected fluid under a microscope.
Už
If we
zase.
find 20 diatoms on the slide, it can be considered drowning, and our result is not false positive due to possible contaminations.
20 jich musím najít, jo. Tady nebudu sedět 2 hodiny.
Let's see. Although I expect we'll find them easily. I won't even notice an army of diatoms from this distance. Great. This be it. Nah. Oh. I'm finally starting to see something here.
Takhle.
It's not a dirty lens, I'm afraid. And perfect. It's not a dirty lens. And perfect.
No. To nevypadá, že by se utopila. Jo, tady, hele, jsou. Utopila se. Okay.
As expected. In solution, the diatoms are clearly visible. There are smaller and larger clusters of them. There will definitely be more than 20 of them.
No. Takže snad utunutím, jo.
I'll make a note of all this.
Okay.
So far, this case looks pretty standard. It's clear from the beginning that it's drowning. Well, the procedure requires me to check everything anyway.
Okay.
So, I move on to checking the other organs. I ligate the heart, and then remove it for inspection. Strongly developed putrefactic hemolysis of the organ can be seen at first glance. Apart from that, no signs of a heart attack or other heart disease. I move on to the next organ. This time, it's the liver.
Nějaký zvětšený ty játra, ne?
It's immediately apparent that the deceased didn't care for herself, like the beginnings of cirrhosis are visible in some areas.
Cirhóza.
I transfer the organ to a board and proceed to dissect. The cross-section clearly shows dilated
Dobrý
veins
řez.
and many small hemorrhagic foci. I must admit that this is quite a feat, considering the rather young age of the deceased. Harper enjoyed drinking so much that she might not have lasted a few more years.
Byla to alkoholička. To je jasný.
I move on to the stomach. I take a sample of the fluid for testing.
A kde máš žaludek, vole? A tady. Tak co je? Aha. Počkej. Tohle potřebuji. Vzorek.
It looks very turbid. I'll see what happens after spinning, but that's in a moment. Now, I carefully ligate the organ, then cut it off.
Cože? Jo, tady, já musím zvážit. Kde to je? No pojď sem. Ježíš.
It's enlarged, probably full of putrid gases. I transfer it to the board and carefully open it, checking the contents. One thing you'd never get used to is how much this task smells. Okay, the stomach is full of fluid and unidentified organic matter, which is probably leftover food. So let's check the diatoms. Again, but in a centrifuge for a change. The problem with examining drowned people is being my own but trusted centrifuge. Ideal for all the fluid tests I need to perform during an autopsy.
Máš zase vzorky? No já zase potřebuju ten notýsek. Už jdu.
Okay, this is one last little sample. Now set.
Diatomy. Tady 35 minut, 25%. 35 minut, 25%. 35 minut. 25. Počkej. 35? Je to tak, ne? 25? A proč mi to nejde? Cože? Jo, teď. To on zase vypadne prout tady. Ne, dobrý. Dej sem.
Done. I'll run it
Ještě
directly
musíme do
into the
laborky.
chromatograph and run it against the data from the police. I'm certain the analysis will show similarities between the fluid and water in Chelsea's well.
Jak to bylo? 3 ml, ne? Jo.
Let me think. 3 milliliters should be fine. Okay, now it's the chromatograph's turn. Yes, the water sample matches the one provided by the police. Well, the results are quite clear. I was hoping it would be a more interesting case. More diatoms. Analysis indicates the same origin. Blah, blah, blah.
No a? Takže utonula, jo? Co jako teď?
There's little left to do. I'm going to check the airway patency of the deceased.
Jasný.
Interesting. Looks like there's something stuck in the trachea. I'm moving to the board for further inspection. I dissect the trachea and open the organ. Inside, I find a wedding ring. This is interesting. Let me look at it. Based on the size, I can say that it's a woman's wedding ring, quite standard from the outside. There's an engraving inside.
No to vidím, no.
The fuck? But this is my ring. How is this
Shit.
ring? But how did it?
Cože?
How did it? But they should be at home. I have
Ty
it.
moje prášky. Dělej.
At home. It's
Nejdeš domů. Jsi
I have
prášky.
to check this out. Where am I?
Dělej.
Jesus Christ! Hope these all make it go away. I have to check the apartment. It can't be.
Jako ty teďka odejdeš domů, jo? Ty seš taky materiál, jako.
Mr. Ridley. Mr. Ridley!
What's all the ruckus?
I need to go home. Immediately.
What? Now?
I have to. Have you seen anyone here this morning? Anybody suspicious?
Oh, there was no one. Dorothy was, but only for a moment, then she left. What's wrong with you, Hammond?
Okay. Thanks.
What about the corpse?
I'll come back, I promise.
Mám
Jesus
dost.
Christ!
Jdi ale. Když chceš jít domů, tak jdi.
I have to check this out.